in my opinion, that is a must-have win for the program. Welcome to the Folsom Frenzy podcast. My name's Chase. Today I'm joined by Topher, Shreyas, and Jake. Sam couldn't make it today. And today we're going to be talking about college basketball, but more importantly, the college football schedule that just came out, as well as maybe a little bit about the college football game that we've all been waiting for. If you haven't already requested the day off, please make sure that you do so. Because if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably excited about the game. But before we get started, as always, this episode is brought to you by studentsections.com, the official #1 resource for student sections, and the place where we got the SCO hat that we've got on. You might have seen it on our Twitter. I know people have already bought it, but if you go ahead and go to the website studentsections.com and use the promo code FFPOD, you get 15% off your whole order. So we love the hat. We've been wearing them around. I think it's really cool. I don't know. And maybe, if we see at the spring game wearing one, Topher will give you a personal high five potentially. But with that being said, the big news on the football front is, it's been kind of quiet otherwise, but the big news on the football front is the schedule coming out, officially official. And, we're going to talk about the schedule throughout the off season because, frankly, it's a content machine. But, first reactions, what is everyone's most exciting game that you see there? I think there's a couple that could be #1 for sure.
Before we get into that, can we just give high level thoughts on the schedule? Shreyas, I want to hear your thoughts just overall.
I'm terrified, but we talked about this with just Chase and I on the last pod. I am terrified of North Dakota State. Absolutely terrified. I don't care how talented you are. Like, they beat top 25 ranked teams. I mean, when you look at the cream of the crop of FCS versus even the top 25 of FBS, sometimes last year, Bill Connolly puts together like a list of the top teams from every division, and he actually had South Dakota State in the top 25 overall, like alongside FBS teams that were top 25 teams that were very good top 25 teams like Arizona. So starting off with North Dakota State, please, no one, if anyone from the football program happens to be listening to this, please don't look past North Dakota State. That is, first of all, terrible scheduling. I know that was done long ago, but my goodness, you are putting yourself in such a no-win situation by playing such a good year in, year out, such a good program. They were on a multi-year winning streak against FBS teams until, I think, actually, funny enough, Arizona beat them a couple of years ago. Just mentioning Arizona. So,
Shreyas, do you think the fact that it's week 1, do you think it'll give us a better shot to prepare for them mentally and not overlook them? Or do you think because Nebraska's right after that it's big time trap game?
I think it's technically like a week 0 game because it's in August, right? It's right at the end of August. I think it's terrible scheduling. That game scares me. I'll be there and I'll be like biting my fingernails the whole time, unless they just come out and stop them.
Yeah.
And really quick, I just want to jump in, Shreyas. That is a week 0 game because we got 2 bye weeks this year. But more importantly, that is a game where after what happened at the end of last season, where we lost all those games in a row and the team was really, people were calling them frauds. And, we've talked to death about how improved that team was. Right. But in my opinion, that is a must-have win for the program. I think, I don't want to be overly dramatic, but I think if we lose that game, it is going to be the end of the world for the confidence of the team. I think it's going to kill us in recruiting because Prime's going to lose that. Everyone was like, it was the first season. He made some improvements. The truck's going to keep rolling. If we lose that game, I'm terrified that the wheels are going to fall off. And I know that game was scheduled when Mike McIntyre was the head coach, but what a horrible, horrible, horrible thing to schedule. This is worse than going to Hawaii in week 0, in my opinion. Like, this is, if you guys remember that game, I think that was 2015. We lost.
PTSD.
It happened twice, Chase. It happened twice.
But
unbelievable.
I mean, oh my God, what a horrible game to schedule. And Jake, I think you have a good point. That game at Nebraska, the coaching staff's trying to kind of get into that rivalry thing. I know Rick George is really good about pushing it on the team, but You
We know they're not going to
cannot.
be looking. They're not going to be overlooking CSU this year after all the banter.
I
So
mean, oh my God. Imagine
So
I'm just gonna say this one time and I'll never ever say it again on the pod, and I will not say it in my predictions. But if we went 0-3, the football team might disband. Like that would be the end of the world. If we lost North Dakota State,
and then
Nebraska, at
Baylor
Colorado
is
State,
like a significant portion of this fan base hates Baylor
and we can get
too
there.
because
By the way,
oh
scheduling
God.
homecoming in September, like I mean, like absolute Looney Tunes. I don't get it. I hate that game as the homecoming game. I do think Baylor's going to be down this year. I do, but wow. I just like, no, why not? Why can't we just schedule a cupcake team, right? Last year we played all FBS teams. Why can't we just play Idaho or Northern Colorado or, not to name any schools. I just,
Listen,
oh my
the
God.
Bears are bad. The Bears are bad. We know what it is. I think you guys are like North Dakota State is a good team. They've been historically a good team. They've had a downward slide in the FCS these last couple of years, right? South Dakota State's now the top dog. The biggest difference from FCS to FBS is not the talent, but the depth. And Prime has the depth now. So
we will see. Yeah, we will
does that matter
see.
for a week 0 game though, where everyone's healthy in theory?
Yes. Right.
Or I think I'm being overly paranoid. I am being overly paranoid. Like
I have confidence. I think it's gonna be a good game, but I have confidence that with what we've gotten in transfer portal, we should start 1-0.
Now I'll tell you what. The last pod episode, we specifically talked about how much empirically the team improved for year over year from the year where we fired Carl Durrell to last year, right? The proof is in the pudding. They improved significantly. And the schedule on the whole is much weaker than what was last year, rated by College Football References the 10th toughest schedule in the entire country. So when you look at the big picture of it, and then you look at specifically the way that they improved their biggest holes, obviously offensive line. The offensive line last year was so futile that it thwarted any ability to do anything on offense. Like you could have put the best offensive coordinator, which frankly, Sean Lewis may have been an amazing offensive coordinator, but you're just not going to stand a chance when you're going 1 Mississippi 2 and Shedeur is getting hit every single time, right? So from that standpoint, overall, looking at the schedule, it's definitely more manageable than what we had to deal with. It's just the fear factor of starting off with such a tough, like historically tough FCS team, and then at Nebraska, they're going to be coming, right? They're going to be coming for blood. At CSU, they're going to be coming for blood, although that could end up being kind of a CU home game. We'll see how it turns out. But the good thing is, next year, the first year of the real playoff, so to speak, you start off 0-3, you can just kind of forget it and keep moving on because all that matters is how you're playing in conference. So it's going to be wild.
Too much. And I know you guys don't mean it. Those aren't predictions, but it is definitely worth throwing out. It could happen. But looking at the schedule holistically, I think there's a real shot we could start 6-0. I'm going to be the optimist here. Once we flip over to the basketball segment, that'll flip. But
who the hell are you?
I think there's a shot we start out 6-0. I think there's a good shot we start out 5-1.
Jake moves back to Denver, and all of a sudden, Jake moves back to Denver, and all of a sudden, that Rocky Mountain water has him feeling optimistic.
Rocky Mountain High, baby. Rocky Mountain High.
What?
I think what it is just.
But I mean, am I wrong though? I think there's a decent chance we start out 6-0. You know, I think the beginning of the schedule is the easiest part of it, and I'm honestly pretty happy where our buys are landing in this schedule. You start off, those 6 games are all winnable, and then you can prep for those big time Kansas State and Arizona games right after your first bye week. I think I'd love a bye after the Texas Tech game. So it goes Kansas State, Arizona, Cincinnati, then Texas Tech. I think we should handle Cincinnati, hopefully, knock on wood. We're Buffs fans. But then I love the double bye because that last stretch of the schedule is brutal. Texas Tech, who's no cupcake at all. Texas Tech is historically really great. Utah, Kansas, Oklahoma. That is going to be a rough stretch. And who knows, like one of those last few games, we might be playing for the Big 12 championship if, everything goes well.
It would be wild if that Kansas game that's going to be played at Arrowhead carries those kind of implications, just because
I want to go to that game.
I know. I feel like I've been programmed as a Broncos fan. I know half of you guys aren't Broncos fans, but like as a lifelong Broncos fan, I've been programmed to be like Arrowhead, terrible place of like House of Horrors. And now, my college team, lifelong college team, gonna play possibly a ranked matchup there. Oh my goodness. That's exciting. See, there's so much potential. There's a lot of potential for this to just be an amazing season, and the talent is clearly up. And I think Jake he's not wrong. I think in my case, I'll just speak for myself. I'm just so beaten down and terrified as a battered and bruised CU fan to think nothing but the worst, But it is there. It has the potential to be a really fun season.
It's a good point, because you have, by the way, Arizona is going to be down this year. Jed Fish is gone. They have to, there was something really magical happening there. And then, sucks to be Arizona, but based off how awful
they kept their players though.
They're not
super
down.
I don't think down.
No, I'm calling now. They're down. They're going to be down. Combo. I just don't believe it. I don't know. I will be afraid of Arizona if Khalil Tate comes back, and otherwise I'm just not afraid. I don't know. Like I think Colorado's gonna be a lot better this year. And for the segment, I'll go first as far as the game I'm most excited about. I think this is a great season. I don't even live in Colorado. I renewed my season tickets. Sorry to everyone who's on the waiting list who can't get tickets. I'm gonna keep renewing them. But so many exciting, unique games. I don't even know if Cincinnati's ever come to Boulder. So as far as that goes, a lot of intrigue. I think the Arrowhead game is really interesting. For me, most exciting game on this schedule. And keep in mind, every year before now, it would have been Nebraska, right? And Nebraska is definitely not the most exciting game, in my opinion, this year. I think it's Oklahoma State. I think Oklahoma State is always a very good team. I don't think they're ever championship level team, but I think they're always a very good team. I think they're going to be competing for the Big 12 this year. I haven't even looked at the betting lines, but my guess would be that they're probably either favorites or Utah's favorite, and something like that. But I want that to become a rivalry game. It's going to be the Friday
rematch.
It's going to, let's not talk about the Alamo Bowl. Yeah, let's please never talk about that Alamo Bowl ever again. But I think that's a really, really compelling game. I just hope that we are as good as we think we are going to be, so that game is as meaningful as we think, because frankly, that could be a play-in game for the Big 12 championship, which, essentially should this year be a play-in game for the playoff. The championship game being the play-in for the playoff. But that's my take. I don't know who wants to go next.
I can go. One thing that I want to point out too is our home schedule this year spans all the way from the end of August all the way until the end of November. So the season is going to feel a lot less compact than it did last year. Because last year, it just felt like you close your eyes and it was over. Because what was it, the last 2 weeks we were on the road. And then we were on the road to start the season. So I really like the way that was laid out. So it's like nice and spaced out. So if it does go well, it's going to be super fun and drawn out. And the media will, of course, latch onto that. And it'll be possibly even crazier than it was last year. As far as games that I'm excited for, I already have my plans set to go to UCF. I have a ton of friends out there because I used to work there. So I used to work in a little east of Orlando. So I got some people out there that I got to go see. It's going to be a bit of a rivalry game with me and a lot of my former coworkers where I used to work. So just from a personal standpoint, I'm really excited to go to the bounce house and tailgate out there and have some fun.
What is this shaking your head, Chase?
I live in Atlanta for our listeners. I could drive to this game in Orlando, but because of fall weddings, I have a wedding scheduled when we are at UCF. So this is me. This is me going on the record. Married? A friend from Penn State. I'm just saying I'm going on the record.
Who gets married during football games? Topher.
Topher.
Spring. It is spring. It is spring. Okay. Yeah. I negotiated that no fall wedding, unlike some people, Chase.
I'm just saying that it is unbelievable that and I'm like, okay, the only weekend that UCF cannot be scheduled is that weekend. And sure enough, that's what happened. So I agree, Shreyas. I love where, we're basically home away, home away. Felt like at the last season we were like home for a long stretch, gone for a long stretch. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I had to go on the record and say, if you schedule a fall wedding, and I honest to God have not decided if I'm going to go to the wedding. It's a really good friend of mine. And I already told him I was free that weekend, and he'll see my social media if I go to this game. But I mean, I don't know. Are we going to be good friends forever? Maybe not. So maybe I should just go to the game. So let me know on Twitter what you
friends
guys
are temporary. The buffs are forever.
The buffs are forever. Forever.
Also, I feel like the Big 12 screwed us with the at UCF game in September. Give us that in November, October, right?
Dude, the weather there that time of year is awful. Oh my goodness. The winter weather there is amazing. Don't get me wrong. I love going there in the wintertime, but God, even that time of year, that's like still hurricane season. So it's not unheard of for that type of thing to happen.
I hope a hurricane happens and it reschedules the game to our bye week in October. That's what I'm officially hoping for, Shreyas, unfortunately.
That's would it be no, I guess it'd be wait, the bye week in October or November. I guess wow, that's a bit of an unusual deal that I'm not used to seeing. Because that would be if that did happen, that would be some rough travel. Home and then all the way back to Florida and then back to Lubbock.
It's not about the team. It's about my personal convenience. So that's why I'm cheering for this. But I don't know, Jake, Topher, who wants to go next on the most exciting?
I can go next.
Go for it, Jake.
So I'm gonna answer two answers. My first pick is obvious. It's at Nebraska. I'm going to try to figure out a way to make it out there. My father-in-law has season tickets. He's had season tickets for years. Big time Huskers fans. All of my in-laws are big time Husker fans. So
how's that never come up on the pod? That's
I know.
We've never talked about that extensively.
Right. Exactly. So that's what I'm most looking forward to just personally. And then if I get a second pick, I'm circling the K-State game. You reignite that Big 12 rivalry, and I think there's a really good chance we're 5-1 or 6-0, and we're again going to be forefront in the national media, and it's not going to turn out like that Oregon game turned out. It's going to be a dogfight, and it's at home. That one's going to be a fun one. So that's the one that I'm circling that I'm looking forward to.
Real quick before Topher goes, one thing that is going to be really funny if CU does start out 6-0, the narrative is going to be, oh, what a weak schedule. I can guarantee that. Last year it was, oh, see, they're frauds. They got cooked by Oregon, blah blah blah. And then of course, the rest of the season panned out the way that it did.
But this year, say that though? It's not a weak schedule. North Dakota State, solid. Nebraska, solid.
Well, we'll see about Nebraska. That's fair. I think North Dakota State is one of those no-win situations. That's what we were talking about, how it's terrible scheduling. Like, if you win, you were supposed to win. If you lose, you look bad because it's FCS, but it's a quality team. North Dakota State would be a quality FBS team if they made the jump. And they could, honestly, at some point.
Yeah, they probably will. Same exact story for CSU. I mean, they play us hard. They play us like the best team in the Mountain West.
And CSU's not going to be worse, I don't think, because that freshman quarterback looked pretty good last year. He had what's his name, Braden Fowler Nicolisi. He's pretty good. He's a pretty good quarterback.
If they're going to be CSU, I will delete
Torrey Horton. Torrey Horton's coming back. Torrey Horton's coming back. He decided not to go. I still think that the narrative, it's not going to be like it was last year. At least last year you started off with a ranked team, which turned out to be not so good in the end. But that was the TCU game is what made CU so much money last year. So we should be really thankful for that. We don't have a TCU-like game on the schedule unless Nebraska, the hype builds up like insane levels before the start of the season based on what people see in spring practice and then fall practice. So that'll be a funny narrative shift if that's how it pans out. All right, Topher, it's you.
I think the game that I am most excited for is at CSU, because I'm going to that game, and I'm excited to go attend the only sellout CSU will ever have in their stadium and see it black and gold.
Oh, it'd be amazing.
It's not gonna. That's how it's going to be. CSU fans do not exist.
So
they show up to one game though.
Boy, they sure seem to exist on Twitter too. But so Topher, it's possible because you're gonna go to Nebraska most likely.
Yeah.
And you're thinking about going to the Kansas game at Arrowhead. So you might end up going to like 10 CU football games next season. So
you're gonna do what I did.
I'm gonna try because I have people that are in Kansas, so I can make that one. Lincoln, my dad's kind of like, yeah, I'll cover it. We're going to that game. So
you gotta go to Tucson. That's close. You got to do them all.
Funny enough, maybe. I may be in Tucson already for a wedding. Fall weddings. But ironically, I may be down there right at that time. So, or it could be the week after, and I would have to come back twice. Oof.
All right. Before we transition to basketball, I do have to make a quick comment that turns out, Shreyas, I don't want to start this whole debate again because my wife, our number one fan, has indicated that we talked about it way too much. But in the Super Bowl, it was interesting that they elected to go first in kind of a similar situation as college football. So maybe Coach Prime is actually coaching at an NFL level, and you really are supposed to go first.
Stop.
In overtime. I don't know.
See how
I'm just saying.
The Niners.
That was
I'm just
not
saying.
intentional.
Kyle Shanahan
had no
notoriously
idea
one of
what
the
the
best
rules
coaches.
were.
Would have scored a touchdown. Just
one of the best coaches.
Dude, he lost the game because of that decision.
I know.
There were clips of the 49ers players being like, "Did you know if we score a touchdown, they get the ball back?"
Yeah. The other thing is, Kansas City already said that if San Francisco had scored a touchdown, they were going to go for 2. So you give away your advantage when you go first in that new format. So that's an interesting take on. I don't know if you're being sarcastic, but
I'm 100% being sarcastic. But I gotta stand by my boy. But before I let Shreyas start foaming at the mouth over that, I think it's time to talk about the gutsy win and coaching excellence from Tad Boyle in that double overtime must-have.
I'm not the only one fuming about that. All the listeners are also
USC win, and who comes through? Coach Tad Boyle. I know it's going to be interesting because if you take one look at Buff's Twitter, I feel like I must be the only person on earth who is team keep Tad, and I will explain it in a minute. Shreyas, you can go, and then we'll let Jake give his like entire notebook about how he hates Tad Boyle.
All right. There's documented history of me during the game early in the second half in our group chat, like going on a rant about how it was time to what is the future of CU basketball going to look like? Because it's super bleak right now with Tad. We were getting blown out by one of the worst teams in the Pac-12. By the way, a team that is way more disappointing than CU, that I have to point out. USC was super hyped because they got Isaiah Collier, 5-star, coming in. They had a bunch of returning guys. They had Bronny James coming in with all that hype. That was one of the more full arenas I'd seen at the Galen Center for a game. Because despite the fact that they're terrible, there were probably a ton of season ticket holders because of the hype that was coming into the season. So that notwithstanding, turns out that team is not good. They almost did this to us in Boulder. And that was a game where I was watching that in real time too, being like, oh my God, this is it. This is it. This is the end. This is this is it. Because we're going to go to the Big 12 next year and just things are going to go, our schedule's going to be insane. We lost Dorian. I can't remember how to pronounce his last name, but we lost one of our top recruits for next season. Oh my goodness. The wheels are coming off the bus. This is so bad. But that said, when you're down to a 1.4% chance to win against anyone on the road, and by the way, Ohio State beat Purdue today. A terrible Ohio State, because college football, it is hard to win on the road. So we got to acknowledge that, right? Ohio State's terrible, and they just beat Purdue.
And I think they just fired their head coach too, right?
They did. State, yeah. It was with an interim coach, right? So things were so bad there, but then they beat Purdue. That's how tough it is to win the road. So when you're down to a 1.4% chance to win, your back is against the wall. If you lose that game, it is over. Now you're fighting for an NIT berth, because if you blow the rest of the season in that situation, you might not even get in the NIT. So that was what they were facing. KJ Simpson went crazy. They took Eddie Lampkin out and they let Luke O'Brien play. And we'll get more into details on that when we go around the horn. But those changes, those adjustments, maybe it was a little too late that happened. Maybe this could have been done earlier in the season. That really gave CU an opportunity to salvage what was left of a very, very disappointing season. So what does the future hold for CU basketball? I don't know. It is unequivocally a disappointing season. They have to figure out some sort of way to not finish in last place in the Big 12 next year. And I don't know if that's going to happen. But you know what? They're alive this year. So I'll wait until, some other time to even, if I have any magical thoughts of how to save CU basketball, I'll let you know. But for now, I'll just at least enjoy that victory because I don't know what the future is going to look like for basketball.
You want me to go, Chase? You just think this is going to be a big tirade, huh? If we recorded this right after that game, or actually when they were down 20, I would have been more heated, but I've had some time to mellow out. You
just look at Jake's Twitter feed.
Check my Twitter feed.
The Twitter feed was bad. It was rough.
It was
he's caught in 4K. He's all like, I hope the bus lose so that we can.
I don't regret anything. I
have to assume. I have to assume Jake was logged out of the podcast account because otherwise those would have come straight out of the main account. But
oh yeah. No, there's it's good I stay away from our account during basketball season. But I don't even know where to begin, guys. I don't know. I don't know. I was happy to see him pull it out. I was, even though I was negative on Twitter.
Okay. All right. I believe you.
Happy to see him pull it out.
Seeing you in person now and talking this face to face, I believe you, but I did not believe you yesterday at all.
But man, oh man, do I not like Tad Boyle as our head basketball coach. I am sorry. He's an awful coach. Every single game. And this is not just the USC game. This is 10 years plus of evidence of him being a bad coach. Look at, just for the USC game, look at when we had 0.3 seconds to shoot a shot and we think we could catch the ball, come down, then do a regular jump shot. That's coaching. That is blatant error in Tad Tad Boyle.
He got it off.
That's number one. Number two, this season, no one cares except for KJ Simpson and Luke O'Brien. Those are the only two guys that care. Then they're the only two guys that want to be out there. You can kind of tell that this team doesn't care. And slight tangent, one thing that really bothers me about that is this is the season that we were supposed to be so great. And Cody Williams is having an awful experience at CU. The team doesn't care. The team's not winning. He's going to do great things in the NBA. And I don't know if he's going to come back and invest at CU. I hope so. Maybe he does. Maybe I'm wrong. But I just wish Cody Williams had a great 1-year stint at CU. He's going to be a top 5 pick. And if you take a look back at our first basketball podcast, what did we all predict? All of us predicted that this team would make it to the round of 32 at least. I was saying I wanted them to make a Sweet 16 or I'd be upset. This is Tad Boyle's best team on paper at the beginning of the season. Tristan Da Silva was, a contender to be all Pac-12. KJ Simpson was going to be all Pac-12. Cody Williams was going to be all freshman Pac-12 for sure, and was going to fight maybe for all Pac-12. Who knows? This team had so much talent. Even Eddie Lampkin was a solid player that filled the hole, and I know we'll get into his struggles here in a bit. But there was such high expectations, and they're going to make the NIT. They probably won't even be a first seed in the NIT. It's just so frustrating. And just watching basketball, Tad Boyle is such a bad offensive coach. Defensively, great. They rebound and they play good defensive ball generally, I'd say.
That's the irony of the season, right?
Offensively,
this
though,
has kind of let us down this year.
Yeah, true. But offensively, man, just watching how they move the ball. They just move around the perimeter. There's not a lot of movement. There's a lot of one-on-one ball. Javon Hadley loves to post up on guys and throw up prayers. Eddie Lampkin, either makes a shot or turns it over. And it's just a lot of one-on-one basketball and not enough ball movement. Look at the Arizona game. I know, Sreyas, you and I were at that game. that's a good basketball team who moves the ball. It's just night and day different. And every CU team has been like this. They don't know how to move the ball. There's just no movement on offense, and it drives me nuts.
Yeah, actually, Jake, during the game, I think one of the few tweets that I sent off from the account during that game was, "Wow, I can't believe that it's this close at halftime," because it doesn't feel like it. It feels like we were getting smoked. And I think your criticism about the ball movement is pretty. If you watch the way they play. I mean, today I was just watching a bit of that Florida Atlantic USF game, and Florida Atlantic lost, right? Florida Atlantic was a very disappointing loss for them, and it's going to most likely prevent them from winning their conference, at least the regular season this year. But in the final 10 minutes of a game, it's just crazy how much how much they move the ball. And yeah, so it didn't work out in the end, but they almost pulled off a 25-point comeback. And it wasn't just one guy, even though they had John L. Davis just cranking up threes every now and again. But there was still so much ball movement, and yeah, we don't really get that here, and it can be painful. Even though, ironically, like I was just saying, I actually think the defense has let us down this year, because there have been plenty of times where I thought that we probably scored enough, but then the other team just starts hitting threes, and there's nothing we can do. Like in that Cal game, oh my God. If you want to look at a moment where the season started to fall apart, it'd be the Cal game, and that was defense for sure.
Yeah, I also think turnovers are killing us too. I saw a graph of quadrants for turnovers forced and also given up, and we were in the lower quadrant of that. But that is also Tad Boyle basketball. All of his teams have been bad at turnovers, and it drives me crazy. Sorry, Chase. What were you gonna say?
So I have a different take, and this is more of a holistic view. There's no question this team has been incredibly disappointing. I mean, we all, I mean, wow, how excited were we about this team? And it was a little bit overshadowed by football this year, but I mean, if you're a true CU fan, you are really excited about this basketball team. So, the good news is the women have picked up some of the slack. They've been a lot of fun this year. But as far as this men's team goes, my reason for saying we need to, because after this season, if the Pac-12 still existed, I'd be like, you know what, it might be time. Tad's done a lot of great stuff for this program, no question, but maybe it's time to go in a different direction. I think you have to 100% keep Tad for your transition to the Big 12, because what you cannot do when you transition into the Big 12, which is far and away going to be the best basketball conference in college basketball next year. It will not be close. The SEC will be really good. It will not be close. Like the Big 12 will be college basketball runs through the Big 12 starting next year, probably forever. Right. And
yeah,
I just don't think you can't do a coaching turnover. I know we lost that recruit, but I mean, Tad can recruit, and Tad can get guys to Boulder. Tad has developed, you'll never catch Jake dead saying this, but Tad has developed way more NBA talent than Colorado has ever.
But he doesn't develop them.
He does.
He's put way more guys into the league than Colorado has ever put into the league. And it's not like totally random happenstance, right? It's not like, the water changed or something in Boulder, right? He develops guys. There's no question about it. Cody's going to be a top pick. Tristan should be maybe a fringe pick. KJ might be picked, like we might have, and that's why it's so disappointing this year, right? Is we have 3 potential first round draft picks
guys
on this team.
He always has top 25 draft picks, and he doesn't do anything with them.
You're conflating things, right? You're conflating whether those players end up playing well for him at CU and dominate versus end up having successful pro careers afterwards.
Okay, sure.
Right?
I could see that. I mean, but Jabari Walker is a good example. Kind of took him a while to get a handle in the NBA.
Jabari Walker went too soon. Like everyone knew that. Like Jabari Walker should not have gone to the league that year.
One more year. He needed one
more
year.
I went to the Nuggets, one of the Nuggets Trailblazers games earlier this. Honestly, Jabari Walker, like when he started cranking up shots, that's when the Nuggets took over the game. So I was like, ooh, yeah.
I just want to.
Chauncey struggles in Portland are a whole other story, but
yeah. Maybe Chauncey can't develop play. I mean, but just really quick, I just want to I just don't think you can have a transition year going into the Big 12, because what's going to happen is you're going to go back to exactly what you were like in the Big 12 before we left, which was absolute bottom feeder, horrible garbage. That's what we were in the Big 12. Let's not make any mistake about it.
Oh, I agree. Sure.
My freshman year, they were 1 1-15 in conference.
There's no doubt.
Yeah.
Before Tad Boyle, CU sucked.
And so
100%.
My concern is that if you go in a big transition year and you cut cut everything and try
all
to
the
start
progress.
fresh, I
think that logic's opposite though. And Shreyas brought up this point, maybe in our group chat, but he brought up the point of if we think they're going to be last in the Big 12, shouldn't we move on from Tad now? And I think we will be in the bottom quarter of the Big 12 with or without Tad Boyle next year.
No chance.
Look at the roster. It's
chance.
awful. You lose KJ, you lose TDS, you lose Cody. We're going to be in the bottom fourth. Easy.
Yeah, Sebastian Rancic is not single-handedly going to make this team compete in a league where pretty much every team thinks they can make the tournament.
I don't want to bash the other guys. Like Bangkok Dak, there's a lot of great potential there. Jope, I think, there's really good potential there, but we're just losing so much talent. I don't think we're gonna be the bottom fourth of the Big 12. I really do.
So Jake that's Jake. We're aligned on that. It's like if you really do think that you're gonna finish in last place either way. Well, here's the key though. This is to Rick George. Rick George, please take basketball seriously, right? There's been a notable drop off in the amount of community support over the last 10 years between the Mike Bone era and Rick George. And frankly, sometimes it feels like the AD doesn't emphasize basketball like they used to try to get people to games and try to get people excited and bring up the hype.
What are some examples of that, Shreyas? Because I was thinking about that more, and I feel like he gets more hate. But I know like Mike Bone would ship people out to the Pac-12 tournament for free. That's students. That's one great example. What else though?
I mean, that's a huge example.
Yeah,
because that created a whole new subset of CU fans when I was in school. So that was my senior year when we played UNLV in Albuquerque. And just took over that whole stadium. Like the pit was just CU. It was Coors Events Center South. That for both the UNLV game and the Baylor game where we lost, it was just unbelievable. And then the loyalty part of it, where if you're like amongst the top 50 most best attendance, you'd get to go to the game for free. They would bus you down. You get your hotel and all that. It was just unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. But then I think. And maybe we perceived this a little bit too, Jake, when we were at the game. A lot of the C unit stuff that was even there before we got there, like the original C unit stuff, 2004, it's just not there. It feels like something is lost. Like no one was putting up their C's. There's no great like coordination on the free throw distractions, which we used to take a ton of pride in. I mean, the band tries to do their part, and the band has kind of retained some of those traditions. But it doesn't feel like there's leadership or coordination. And that is sad because the whole ethos of C Unit and why it was started in the first place, again, before our time, was people only wanted to go to football games. And so they were like, well, we should show some love to basketball. And we should try to get people to basketball games and have some fun and do some weird things like buff chips.
And it was all student led, and they pushed the envelope. Right? Like buff chips were
yeah, they did.
Pretty racy, questionable.
One of the most absurd buff chips that I remember. So this was, I think, my sophomore
year. Can you explain what buff chips are really quick, Shreyas, for those listening that might not know?
Yeah, so basically the buff chips, they would basically have a roster for the other team. And there would be very important informational say about each of those players that you could use as fodder when you're cheering, like when you're, trying to razz them and say some terrible thing. But like maybe the most absurd example that sticks in my head, and this isn't necessarily the type of thing that you always want to do, but when you're pushing the envelope, back in 2009, 2010 range, CU was playing Kansas. And Kansas had a point guard at that point named Brady Morningstar, who had gotten in trouble with the law, right? There was some legal trouble that he was dealing with. You guys can look it up. I probably shouldn't, go into detail, but like he was in trouble, and there were some chants that were done by the student section, like when he was shooting free throws, that were directly referencing what he was facing legally. And sure, like you can say it's classless or whatever, but at least it's a sign that people are like the students are engaged. and they're involved. And I get, yeah, as an AD, you can't promote that type of behavior, blah, blah, blah. But the passion is what you want. And I feel
you
like
don't have to stonewall it. You don't have to promote it, but you don't have to stonewall it. And I think that's always been something the athletic department struggles to straddle that line, I think.
And so how this ties in to the coaching situation is Rick George has always been able to just say, well, Tad wants to be here forever. They're at least NIT level year in, year out, other than a couple of years. They make it to so they would have made it 5 times if it wasn't for the COVID shutdown. It would have been 5. So, but it's only 4 officially, but it would have been 5. And that's more. And then they've had more 20-win seasons under Tad than than the entire history of the program combined before that. Right. So it was easy. It was easy for Rick George to be like, all right, whatever. We're going to get our 6 to 8,000 fans per game. And I don't have to pay any attention or anything to this situation. It's self-contained. They can kind of do their thing. But when you go to the Big 12 and now you're looking at a situation where you have a major talent deficit, you have an experience deficit coming into next year. Now it's like, who's the right person to like stimulate this? It's like a full program-wide investment that needs to be, right? And I'm definitely worried about the future of this team from that standpoint. I don't know. Can you get a Dusty May? Probably not. From FAU, that guy's an amazing coach. Could you get someone like that? Probably not. But that would be that's where I struggle with it. It's like there needs to be more like systemic.
All right, hold on. I
don't like that argument.
I posed the question, who do we hire? And I have the answer. And people might not like it. But the hire you make if you fire Tad is Nico Medved. There's no question who the hire is. That is like the easiest brain dead hire you can make, right? Well, you can pay him triple what he's making. He can go into the Big 12. You can get him, right? That's the guy, in my opinion. He's developed great teams with absolute dog water talent at Colorado State, which is the exact reason why he hired Tad. And let's be clear, the Tad hire worked. It just, I mean, maybe he's lost his fastball. This team's really disappointing. But if you fire him, that's the guy. That's the answer.
I'm a little wary of Nico just because they got a bunch of like Division II and Division III All-Americans and got them all to transfer to CSU at the same time. They're a super old, experienced team this year, and they're really good. But I'm a little afraid that next year, if he stays at CSU, they might get exposed because of all those players.
I'm just saying. Anyways, he's had what 3? It'll be 4 20-win teams out of the 6 years he's been at Colorado State, and he's made the tournament with Colorado State. That's a good, I don't really cheer against Colorado State when we're not playing them, but I mean, he's a good coach and he does more with less. And that's what he's going to have to do if he comes to Colorado in the Big 12. That's what you have to do at Colorado in the Big 12, because I mean, you have Goliath in Kansas and BYU is putting out the best team of white basketball players I've ever seen in my entire life. Like the Big 12 is deep and you're going to have to do more with less. You're not going to be able to recruit at that level.
Topher, say something. We need you.
Say something. All I say is, based on the game last night, Tad can coach. Tad can coach. I think there's a misunderstanding between, like, on paper this team should be the most talent, but like you said, it feels like the guys don't care. And
Topher, what are you, high?
Maybe
I don't think he can coach.
maybe it's on the players for not caring, and maybe it's on the coaches for not getting them to care. But last night, you saw clearly Tad drawing up the right actions for KJ to come down the baseline. You have your best player with the ball in his hand going to his right hand and have a roll as a dump down to send it to double overtime. You have the call to switch the high screen because they need the 3, and USC didn't think of a counter after that action, and they had to chuck up a contested 3 at the end. These are tiny adjustments that made all the difference down the road. And like Shreyas said, when you're down to 1.4% chance of winning, it's on coaching to get you that win, right? You need players to play, but it's got to be scheme. It's got to be getting them on the same page. And Tad showed that at a very high level last night. And I think he's shown that repeatedly throughout his coaching tenure. And back to the developing talent, Derek White is an all-star. Derek White is an all-star now, and it's because of his background in defense.
He was at CU for a year.
Yeah, but that year, going from where he was playing big time Division I basketball and having that exposure with coaching from Tad Boyle has made him into the defensive savant that he is today.
And you got to keep
USC is the second worst team in the Pac-12.
And we won.
Chase, go for it.
We won.
Listen.
We won.
We swept them.
Listen.
We beat
this
them.
is my first year. I'm coming off my first year coaching high school basketball, and there were teams that we beat by 20 that ended up beating us the second time we played them. It does not matter if they are the best team or the worst team. When it comes to basketball, it's who shows up night in and night out. Anybody can beat anybody.
5 years ago, if I had told you that Tad Boyle would beat a player named LeBron James, you would have been so excited. You would not have understood the context, but you would have been excited. And I just want to say, right, Colorado, I mean, we definitely are on the outside now looking in. There's no question, right? But there's we're projected, I think, first or second 4 out. But some of those teams ahead of us, one of them is Utah, right? And we have a chance to beat Utah at home. We have Cal, who we should have beat the first time. If we lose to Cal, the season's over, and we should not accept an NIT bid, period. But you have Utah, you have Cal, and you have Stanford. Those should be 3 games that Colorado is the better team in and can win. And I do wonder, the back was against the wall at halftime against USC, right? And I know the guys don't care, but maybe this team can fight when the back's against the wall, and they gotta prove it now. Because if they can win, 3 games here and make a little bit of a run in the Pac-12 tournament, I mean, this team's not out yet. This team can still make the dance. And if they get hot, and if Cody gets hot and he's playing well, and if Tristan decides to wake up, and if KJ is hitting shots, this team
Tristan can catch the goddamn ball.
I mean, this team can beat a lot of really good teams, right? And so I don't know. Like, I think we're holding a funeral a little bit too early, and I
held this funeral years ago.
Call me crazy. I mean, I think we can win out. And if we win out and we pick up 1 or 2 tournament games, this team should be, now obviously we have to end at Oregon State. Those are not easy wins. But if we win out and pick up 1 or 2 tournament games, we're in, period. We don't have to win the Pac-12 right now. Now, if we lose,
I think it might still be tough with that.
I don't know. I think
I was gonna ask this group.
I think you want Cody Williams in March Madness, right? Like if you're advertising, I know that's not supposed to be factored into it, but like he's going to be probably number 1, number 2 in the draft, right? If he ever decides that he wants to show off maybe a little bit. But I'll get off my soapbox. But I don't think this team's dead yet.
I have to rebuttal your if CU beat LeBron James quote. And if I would have told you at the beginning of the season that CU was not even the first 4 out, but the next 4 out, you all would have said, man, we got to move on from Tad. You all would have said it.
Well, I think we did.
Really quick.
I think we did. Yeah.
Really quick. Do we think they have a shot to make the tournament if they don't win the Pac-12 tournament? So just to recap for the listener, they have Utah at home. That's their next game. Then Cal at home, Stanford at home, at Oregon State. Then you go into the tournament. What do you guys think? Do you guys think they still have a shot? And how many games do they need to win in the Pac-12 tournament
win out
for that shot?
Yeah, I think they have to win out for sure. I like they have to beat Oregon. That's huge. That's the only game left that has any, that we can hold any. I
think Utah at home is also would be a nice win.
Utah is falling apart. I mean, they're losing right now. And if they lose this game to UCLA right now, they're going to fall to 6-9 in conference.
And it's weird because we have to cheer against them, but also we want to cheer. That's the problem with college basketball. Is like you don't know how to cheer, right? Because they're ahead of us, but we need that quality win. So I don't know.
I hate to say it, but the only way that I see that CU has a guaranteed path to the tournament is if they win out the rest of their games, including beating Oregon. And they probably have to beat Washington State or Arizona in the Pac-12 tournament. That's the only way. It's just so tough right now.
Yeah.
Like, because the Pac-12 is so bad. And I know people might have the thought like, well, it's still a Power 5, blah, blah, blah. I've seen it firsthand. I've seen it firsthand where the Pac-12 was almost a one-bid conference. In 2012, Washington won the conference regular season, and they didn't make the tournament. CU stole their bid when they won the Pac-12 tournament, four wins in 4 days, and then Cal got in as one of the last 4 in and lost in the play-in game it can happen. And in fact, I don't even think that was the only time the conference tournament, like the team that won the conference regular season didn't make it. I think Washington did it again. Lorenzo Romar and Mike Hopkins have been just, that's your measuring stick for disappointment, honestly, for the last 10 years for them. Because that's exactly what happened. They've had a ton of talent, and then they would maybe even win the conference regular season, but then the conference would be weak and they wouldn't make it. So it's a tough road ahead. But the team is talented enough. If they've just somehow found a rotation that works, then maybe we should talk about that at some point too, after we're done going around about what rotations might work. They can beat anyone, but will they? We'll see. I hope so. All right, who's next? Come on. Don't just look dead.
I don't have anything else to add. I think you nailed it right on the head, Shreyas. I agree with you. I think they need to do exactly that to make the tournament.
All right, now let me ask around. What rotation would you like to see going forward?
What would we not like to see too?
Or what would you not like to see? So I'll say where I have concerns. Eddie Lampkin, we've talked about this. I've gone back and forth on Eddie Lampkin. I love his passion. Don't get me wrong. I love his passion. I love his size. That adds like a very important element. And I think that against teams that have kind of like the bigger power forwards or bigger centers, which isn't as common in college basketball in general, right? It's you can get away with having more wings and guards in college basketball, but against a team with like some big dudes, like Utah, for example, Brandon Carlson, 7-footer, you might need Eddie like on defense, but he scares me so much with the ball in his hand if he's handling the ball. If he has to dribble the ball more than 3 times, it just looks like a turnover is going to happen. Even though he can be a skilled passer, but he just scares me like when he has the ball, and that's not the type of person you want to run your offense through. So that's one thing. And then the other thing that I'll point out, which is a huge disappointment, is I don't think you can have Tristan da Silva as your primary scorer. I hate to say it, but
not even a little bit.
He has been brutal in the clutch. Brutal. And yesterday he hit a 3-pointer in overtime, which that was huge. That was a huge make, and I'm not going to downplay that. But man, there have been so many times this year. There's the Utah game, the Cal game, where he's like the Carlton meme. You know the Carlton meme where he's like taking the 3-point shot and it's in slow motion, and he's like, yeah. And then it just doesn't even come close to going into the basket. Like I've had that. I've had that with Tristan. And I'm not the only one that's pointed that out. I was on Twitter yesterday. I saw Ted say the same thing. He's like, Tristan da Silva make a clutch 3 for once challenge, and he did, which was awesome. But God, there's been so many times, and if we want to blame Tad for the season, I think that's fair. But I think one of Tristan kind of regressing, and the key to him regressing is as the primary option, where everyone knows like he has to be the guy, and he's supposed to be an all-conference performer. His struggles this year have been the difference in multiple games, like the ASU game too. Well, the ASU game, was he hurt? He may not have played in that game. And I don't know how much his ankle injury is still played a part in his struggles, but I think the offense kind of has to run through KJ. It has to. And then you need to find maybe ways to get Tristan open, but don't let him just crank up wild shots where he's creating for himself. And then you probably gotta let Luke O'Brien play smaller lineup over Eddie Lampkin, because I wish they had plus minus stats. But when they were after that Bronny James layup where USC was up 16, they brought Luke O'Brien, pretty much played the rest of the game. I don't think Eddie came back out, and we saw what happened. Sucks to learn these things so late in the season.
I want to throw a stat out there real quick. Eddie Lampkin is averaging 2.7 turnovers per game, which when I first saw the statistic, seems lower than I expected. But then you remember that he's in fact not a point guard. And then you realize like he should never really be passing the ball. So those turnovers are all just just stupid. Like they're bad. And 2.7,
you know, 1 out of 10 times he gets that cool Nikola Jokic pass. He has it in him.
He does. He definitely. But the problem is his turnovers aren't even usually on passes. They're usually just like getting stripped,
just losing the ball.
He's dribbling the ball.
And I think we should make a point. We are a pro Eddie Lampkin podcast. I think.
Love Eddie. You know, his passion is great. So I think he cares. I think he cares. Like he was. I remember him being animated and frustrated after that CSU loss, and that was, you do like to see that, but man. Every time I see him bring the ball up the court, which he does sometimes, my heart sinks. I'm like, God, dude, it just doesn't look right. It just flat out doesn't look right. It doesn't look like he's in control. And we need to find a way to use him more in that sense. Maybe it's treating him more like you would have Lawson Lovering. Not that Lawson Lovering's playing well right now either, in Utah, but maybe treat him more as like a defensive specialist and a rebounder, and don't
7 boards a game
offense through.
So you don't want to lose that, and I understand why Tad is hesitant to move in a different direction, because as far as size goes and like in position on the other team, you really don't have Luke O'Brien's not fighting for rebounds,
he's a very good rebounder. Luke O'Brien is a very good rebounder, but he's a little undersized. That's the key.
Yeah. 3.8 rebounds per game versus 7. So
but it's in how many minutes is he? 22 minutes.
Luke O'Brien, 22 minutes.
And the height difference and the size difference.
I'm not saying, I'm just saying they play approximately the same number of minutes on average. And, I just understand why Tad, you need those rebounds, right? Because in a lot of games we get killed because we give up offensive rebound after offensive rebound. And, you just can't, so I get it. And I want to point out one other stat that I thought was kind of interesting. Cody Williams almost shooting 50% from 3, which is pretty impressive. 47.1%.
Get him the ball more.
Yeah.
Cody's been turning over the ball quite a bit.
Yep. I was just about to say that. He had 7 yesterday.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I just wanted to add, Shreyas, I think I agree with everything you said. I think that was well summed up. I just wanted to write a little love letter to KJ Simpson. He is one of my favorite buffs of all time. He has that Mamba mentality in him. You saw it during the USC game because he's from LA. I think he's from LA, right, guys? And,
yeah, he is.
That sounds right.
Saw it during the Arizona game because they recruited him hard. I think, did he commit to Arizona and then decommit and come to us?
Yeah. I think he actually signed. And
he's just like
John Miller got fired too.
Okay. He's just built different. He has that Mamba mentality. McKinley Wright had it too. Those are the only 2 guys in my recent memory that had that mentality. Like, I don't think Derek White had it, or even Spencer Dinwiddie. I wouldn't say quite had it as much as those 2 did. He had some of that. But man, do I love KJ. He's just putting it all out there. I just had to add that.
You know who had it, Jake? Askia Booker.
Mamba mentality? Did Ski?
He definitely did, but sometimes you wish he had a little bit less of it.
Yeah, I want to give an honorable mention to George King as well, who thought he had.
I was about to say,
really wanted to have it.
George King.
There's a difference though. The Mamba mentality is like you want to beat these guys to a pulp. George King didn't have that. He had kind of more of the shooter mentality. Maybe like the Steph Curry mentality.
I'm telling you, Askia Booker definitely did, but sometimes you're like, dude, stop. You're shooting like 37%. You're shooting like 37% from the field, not even from 3.
Yeah, like, I remember those days, man.
It was easy. Now this is like reminiscing. It's like it was easier to blame just Askia Booker for some of the stuff that happened back then. It's like he's just jacking up shots, blah blah blah. But yeah, to your point, maybe some of it is scheme. Maybe some of it is scheme, just like allowing that type of player to have those types of games. I don't know, man. So overall, I'm really just fingers crossed. I hope we can find a miraculous way to get into the tournament and win some games in the tournament. It would be so nice. But as far as the future is concerned, one thing is for sure that I definitely said, AD needs to commit more time and energy to basketball. Prime is almost about to be self-sufficient, right? He doesn't need that much extra support. He is Prime. Prime is Prime. And that is an amazing thing, right?
You could always use the more money, though, and help him with that.
You can always use, money's fine, but I'm just
NIL
saying,
stuff.
you just can't forget about basketball. Unless you want to allow basketball to become more abundant, it's a choice. That is a choice, right? Obviously, basketball is not going to make you as much money, but the overall bigger picture is, you need way more support for basketball. You can't just be like, Tad Boyle, go win me 20 games and go to an NIT. There needs to be some support there. And is Tad Boyle going to be the answer when we're in the toughest conference? I don't think so. I don't think he is.
There's the answer. Then cut the cord now, man.
and if we're gonna come in last, but the problem is, I would say cut the cord, but Rick George, like, who are you going to hire? I really need to know that. We can't have a situation like with Gary Barnett. Everyone's like, Gary Barnett, he's terrible. They just lost 70-3 to Texas. We could do so much better. And then they got the best available coach in Dan Hawkins, and the rest is history. We can't let
I wish this podcast existed, because I guarantee you we all would have been so excited about Dan Hawkins back then. Don't say that was a bad hire. At the time, that was a brilliant hire. And that's going to be Nico Medved for this basketball team. Every time we lose a game under Nico Medved, I am going to call Jake on the phone and remind him that we could have had Tad Boyle. And really quickly, I want to point out that we're kind of in a unique situation. The AD department is swimming in cash right now, right? They already paid off the buyouts for all the football buyouts, which was crazy. They didn't think they were going to be able to do that. Not only with Carl Durrell, but they had some residual from Mike McIntyre, apparently, which is crazy. You have the money, you can fire him, you can move on, right? And if you want to attack the Big 12, you can do that. But just know that you're getting Nico Medved. You're not getting,
Dusty May, right?
Alex English.
Wait, Kim English. Not Alex. That's a Nugget. You're thinking of Nuggets,
yes.
great.
I was like, Alex English.
Kim English, thank you.
George Carl, bring us George Carl, baby.
Oh my God, George Carl.
Could you imagine George Carl with Prime?
What do you guys think my take was on George Carl?
Oh my God.
I just want to point out, by the way,
I'm sure you hated George Carl.
Why not Alex English? Why not Alex English? He's not doing anything. He likes Denver.
Someone who just watched the Northern Colorado program become the worst FCS program ever by hiring a celebrity who won a Super Bowl once as our head coach.
It's true. It's important. You really can't just hire anyone off the street. It's been shown time and time again that you just can't do it. And when you do, so Prime is not anyone off the street, right? So I know there could be some people could draw some parallels there, but he established himself not only with success, not just success at JSU, but with recruiting. He brought Travis Hunter to JSU, so that's not an anyone off the street type of deal, like anyone with a profile off the deal. I really do believe that, as scared as I am about that schedule, that's more just PTSD. That's more just CU being a Buffs fan, PTSD. Like we're gonna do great, and he's gonna do great at CU as long as he's here. But you can't bring any old random.
So bad. It's gonna hurt so bad. Oh my God.
We're so beaten down, man.
Because every time
our podcast is so different than all the other podcasts.
You ever think about 2016 and you were like, 2016, we've turned the corner. We're gonna be so legit this year. And then 2017 happened, and then 2018 happened.
Gosh.
Anyway,
you can go further back, right? The
Bill Self. Bill Self is gonna be the next CU basketball coach.
Yeah.
We need to shoot as big as you possibly can. He's totally gonna come here, guys.
Yeah, write the check. And Allen Fieldhouse, why would I want to stay there? I'll go to the Keg. Yeah. All right. Well, we kind of ran longer than we expected to. We know we haven't been posting as frequently, as we kind of wanted to in the off season. So we'll try to get episodes every once in a while out there. We won't really be on a regular schedule during this off season, but and one other quick shout out to studentsections.com. If you see the SCO hats, we're going to post some videos on Twitter as well. They really are cool. Just give them a look. We really appreciate them sponsoring us. I do get last word in this episode, so I will say that this podcast is officially a pro Tad Boyle podcast. And with that, we will go ahead and close out. Please give us a follow on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. We're going to try to post more video more frequently. And if you have any thoughts about, Tad or anything like that, we'll probably run a Twitter poll or something along those lines. What do you think? Obviously, this is before the last few games of the season. So if we end up losing out, I will retract everything I've said. But thanks for listening, everyone, and go Buffs.
Go Buffs!
Go Buffs!